Hi everyone, Clam here to announce an upcoming convention appearance. Verathane and I will be tabling together at Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle, Washington, from March 2nd to March 5th of 2023. Thane will be selling copies of their completed webcomic Chiralt, some prints, and a brand new collaborative zine called Battle Damage. And I will have the debut first volume of my webcomic Phantomarine, plus some prints, charms, and pins. If you can drop by, our table will be E11 in the Artist Alley. We'll be happy to see you there. And now, on with the show!
Do it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams untrue!
Shit, I know we just need to get this episode done. We need to get it down. Oh, we're coming down to the deadline. Oh no. No, I'm not gonna go with that.
It's been delayed 4 times already. We've just got to do it.
F it, we'll do it live.
I got so nervous for a second. I was like, Freddie, are you okay? We're all gonna bail on air for the 5th time. Never mind.
I think we need to reschedule this episode.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.
But wait,
Oh,
if we reschedule, how will we meet our goals?
Our deadline.
hello and welcome to Screen Tones, where we talk anything and everything webcomics. Today, we're going to be talking about those oh-so-tricky things called deadlines. I'm Rennie, I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomic Kate Blast.
And I'm Crispy. I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomics Ghost Junk Sickness and Lunar Blight.
I'm Verathane. I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomics Chiralt and Witchwood.
And I'm Delphina. I use she, her pronouns, and I make the webcomic Somnambulous.
Now, as with any formal job, most things involving comics do have some kind of deadline, where you've maybe signed a contract and you're being paid based on providing work by certain dates or whatnot. But in the world of webcomics, job is a bit of a fuzzy term, and so are deadlines. They're self-imposed or imposed by outside events or even our peers. So we want to talk about that today. So where do you guys think deadlines come from? Where do they go?
They come from hell.
Cotton Eye Joe.
No. I mean, there's a lot of places that deadlines can come from, right? I mean, you can kind of make up your own stuff. You can kind of, maybe you join an anthology or a group and they're doing a project and there's a deadline for that. Or maybe you're going to a convention or there's a contest and there's a deadline for that. There's kind of 3 categories for me, like that self-imposed zone where this is my personal goal. It doesn't really have anything to do with any outside forces. It's just what I want for me. There's also just like the group stuff where it's like, yeah, it would be nice to do this, but and other people are kind of counting on me, but if I dropped out, it wouldn't be so bad. And because I know all the people in the group, maybe that deadline can be adjusted if the group is having trouble meeting it. But then like conventions or contests, obviously they don't care about you. There's no like talking your way out of like, oh, can I have one more day on this? So yeah, then those are a little harder and you have to like try to figure out what to do.
Yeah, when I was starting out on Chiralt, a lot of my deadlines were like very kind of basic and immediate, because I was just kind of doing pages almost as they were coming out. So I would have 2 or 3 deadlines a week, depending on what my update schedule was at the time. Sometimes it was twice weekly, sometimes it was 3 times weekly. So I would just have these regular self-imposed deadlines of, well, I gotta have a page by Wednesday, gotta have a page by Friday. But those were like kind of fundamentally, it was me who was deciding that. And if I like wanted to break from that schedule for whatever reason and say at the end of this chapter, I'm going to take 2 months off or something, I could just kind of do that. And I never really let go of that knowledge kind of at the bottom of things, which helped take a little bit of the pressure off of me, because I would be saying like, okay, I'm trying to meet this pace, which is the pace that I want to update at. But if I ever start like struggling with it, I just got to make sure to let my readers know right away, and then I can like I could slow down or stop or something.
I think there's a big misconception in that, if you don't meet a certain upload schedule or whatever, that, or if you miss an upload, readers are going to get mad and storm your house with pitchforks or whatever. My experience has been, at least with Cape Blast, very nice and relaxing, where like I have got bounced between 2 pages a week, 1 page a week, 2 page a week, no pages. I have like a very loose grasp on a solid upload schedule, but that's because, sometimes life happens and you have to adjust. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about webcomics is you can do that. But you just have to go in with a plan. You have to go in knowing, okay, here are the adjustments I'm making. Here's the ultimate goal. And I'm still working to meet that. And I'm supporting the things that are helping me get there. And I think that's really important to recognize when you're sort of approaching deadlines and things.
Yeah, like these folks have said, the really cool thing about webcomics is that they're very fluid with how, where, when, why you can kind of put in that work and kind of get things done, make a project moved and whatnot. The things that like Delphi had mentioned in the beginning that kind of make it like different is when it's going to kind of come from a place that, when things expect certain kind of output when you're on like contracts and stuff like that, even contests and so forth, when you start to think about basically working for something else, that's when things are going to start happening. Now, this is not to say that if you're just by yourself and you have like no one to kind of, I guess, please, it's like a free for all, you could just post it whenever. Yes and no. It always depends on the goal for your project and where you're kind of going from that. So, in my instance, working on Ghost Young Sickness and Lunar Blight, I work on it with Space. There are two of us working, so I have to do my part so that things actually get done. I'm in charge of writing with Space, but my biggest input comes from the inking. And then we've kind of both tackled the rest and stuff like that. She draws and stuff like that. And so if I don't finish the inks on the page, I mean the pages aren't gonna get done, right? So okay, we're gonna work in batches. We have X amount of pages. I need to get X amount done by this date. And if I don't, we're going to be trouble with our buffer and stuff like that. And when I decide these things, you got to keep in mind what works for you in your process too. It's not just I'd like to get it done by then and you just kind of throw the dart and see if it sticks to the board and you're just like, "Oh god, I hope that works." But as you create and you go along, you're going to be like, "Okay, what's working for my process? How many pages do I actually get done a week? Oh, okay. This is how fast I work. This is my buffer, so when I do have busy days or I have times where I'm going to hang out with friends or whatever, I can take those days when I want because I've already built it up, and it just makes sense. And then I can start working into those deadlines that are going to make sense for the projects that I want to get completed, because that's essentially how things will get done. You can get things a little bit slippy from there, but keeping on top of that and making sure that there's kind of, a date that you can't pass really, well, helps me for sure, at least.
And I know one of the things you just mentioned there that's really important too is it's definitely a learning process. It's when you're working through comics and you're just getting started or maybe you're 3 or 4 years in, you're gonna learn how long it takes you to do certain things and how much time you have in your available in your week to be able to work on comics. And all those things sort of can change month to month, year to year, and it's just learning and paying attention to that and digging into sort of, okay, how do I set this up so I can maintain a good balance? And I know like it's very interesting that you talking about your process with you and Space with two people, because you've had like 6 or 7 years of Ghost Junk to sort of hone in on that process, and it wasn't the same at the start or even 3 years that it is now for you guys, right?
Yeah, it's I laugh about my process a lot because it's comically changed.
Big mood.
And I really, when I wanna give advice to people, I'm just like, I wanna hold them and be like, "Please don't do what I've done." Like, I wanna protect you from what I've done. Uh, because, I mean, like, that it is how you find out. You gotta mess around and stuff like that, but also in the same sense, there's a lot of things that we were finding out that definitely could have been solved if, we were just a little bit more savvy asking people and stuff like that. But like, process has changed. We used to try to find out who was faster at doing the art, who was faster at doing inks. Found out that Space actually hated doing inks, and I was slow as molasses at drawing, and and so on and so forth. And just honing that process, and that'll eventually help, kind of understand the trajectory of the dates and how long this project's going to take and stuff like that. You eventually get better at guessing, like, oh, I can finish like a chapter or two a year kind of thing. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's really important too, to like scale it back out to like not a week, but like the month or the year or something like that. Because you're always going to have off days. You're always going to have like a bad day at work or a bad week, or just something happens where someone's visiting out of town, and you are going to get thrown off your schedule for a couple weeks or whatever. And when you have that kind of buffer, then you have that knowledge of, okay, I can take an average of all of these numbers. Maybe I can't finish 2 pages every week, but I can have 8 finished comic pages by the end of the month. And I can post 2 pages a week because that's what it maths out to for my buffer. So that's been realistic for me in the past. It's a schedule I can usually meet. It suits my writing style. So I feel like knowing that can take a lot of pressure off of me when I have a bad week or a bad day or something. And I'm like, no, I didn't draw on Thursday. Why didn't I draw on Thursday? You didn't have to draw on Thursday necessarily. And I think when you scale back and look at the bigger picture, that helps a lot.
Yeah, I think that's actually the biggest thing that has changed in my process between working on Chiralt, my first comic, and Witchwood, the one that I'm doing right now. When I was working on Chiralt, a lot of my deadlines were kind of right down to the minutiae. Like, okay, I need a page here, and a page here, and a page here, and a page here. But with Witchwood, I've been trying to look at it in like much more of an overview, like a top-down approach, where I'll be like, well, I want to be able to do about 3 chapters a year, like 2 to 4 chapters a year, so that I can keep up with my current schedule, which is 3 pages a week. That kind of breaks down to like 150. My pages tend to be, or my chapters tend to be between 30 and 50 pages each. So that kind of that math roughly breaks down. And I tend to work on my pages in large batches. Like I'll kind of try to finish sketching an entire chapter and then start inking, and then start sketching the next one. So I can kind of work like in one part of the process. Like I'll just live in sketching mode for like a whole month. And I'm not really thinking about this is Tuesday's page, because the pages that I'm working on, I'm working like 6 to 8 months ahead of whatever's up on the website. I'm just kind of thinking of it in terms of like, well, this is the first page of the 5 pages that I'm hoping to sketch or ink today. And maybe it won't be 5 pages. Maybe it'll be like 6 pages. Maybe it'll be 1 page. And whatever number I get done, if it's like a small number, I'll make up for it later in the week or later in the month by putting in a little extra work on a day that I have more energy or something like that. So it takes the pressure off of the individual moment, just kind of knowing that I'm meeting the overall goal. Like, well, I got the right number of pages done this month. So yeah, like Delphi said, like you can take a day or two off here and there.
Yeah, and then that's so helpful when you get something out of left field that like takes you out for a while. Having that buffer is so key to like if you are someone who likes to be a little more loose with deadlines, you got to have a solid buffer. As someone who is a little loose with deadlines, who doesn't have a big enough buffer, don't. But I did want to say that I think that does lead into my sort of core thinking about deadlines is I sort of divide them up into like two categories. I have the ones that are written in my planner in pencil. Those are things that like I'd really like to get 3 pages done by Sunday, but that's flexible, still just to keep on pace for the 8 to 10 pages a month. Those are all written in sort of, they don't really have a hard date for getting done outside of like oh, I need to have the final touch ups done in order to upload this. But those are like very much like written in pencil. Then there's the Sharpie deadlines where it's like, I have this convention, and in order for me to have books in time, I need to place the order this date. So therefore, book whatever needs to be done by this date, full stop. So like the ones in pencil, you can erase, you can move around. Sharpie deadlines, those are firm. You got to keep those like in front and center. And I like to take those deadlines and put them on like a whiteboard or on something that is right in front of where I work every day. So I see that deadline every day, and it's a reminder of, okay, you can fudge things around a little bit, but you got to get it done by then. And you got to, set up your work week and set up your time based on getting to that bigger goal.
I really love that breakdown of like pencil versus Sharpie deadlines. And one of the things that I find helps for Sharpie deadlines, especially conventions where I'm super nervous and like maybe I've dallied a little too much and now we're getting to the nitty gritty and I'm not sure if the business cards are going to get here in time or whatever. As soon as I know I'm going someplace, one thing I try to do is write down my plan A, my plan B, and my plan C. Plan A is my best, most professional business card. I really want like to have the nice quality paper from the nice printer that I like to use. Hopefully you're familiar with the printer. Hopefully you've been getting some tests before even that point. Plan C is if all else fails, I can write my information on a card and tell people to take a picture of it. And it's better than nothing. And
I thought Plan C was writing it down on a scrap of loose leaf paper and tearing it apart to hand out little scraps to
But
people.
then you have to have more than one loose leaf paper. If you just have one piece of paper, then you can tape it down. So that's plan A and plan C. Plan B is in the middle. So maybe your plan B is the loose leaf paper that you cut up, or you just print things at home, or maybe you go to the FedEx office. Oh gosh, don't go to FedEx office. But yeah, something in the middle where like, okay, if I really get in trouble, it can happen. It can still happen somehow. And yeah, just kind of work your way from there. Like try to figure out, okay, is this a high priority? Is the business cards more of a priority than my books? Maybe I concentrate on my book stuff, and if I don't have enough time after I finish prepping my books, then we'll go with a less costly business card option, but just whatever makes sense for that thing. And the good news is, especially for conventions, if like printed materials and stuff, you can get a lot of them and then you'll have them for next time. So it's always worth the investment to try to get the plan A done, even if it doesn't work out for that convention, because it'll be ready for the next one. Same with like applying for collectives or things like that. Put together all the components that you need before you need them. And even if you don't make the deadline, they'll be good for something later on down the line for sure.
And I think that's like one of the real positive things about, setting deadlines and keeping track of them is it really helps keep you accountable, especially in a field where the buck stops ultimately with you. You are your own boss and you are all your own employees. You are wearing all the hats. So having sort of something even slightly external to keep you accountable is so important towards keeping up that motivation for a lot of people. And I know that for some folks that might seem daunting or stressful, and they just want to go loosey goosey and dive in and just wherever the breeze takes them. But if you got big goals, there's nothing that holds you accountable more than setting a drop dead date.
And that's just the thing, is that accountability and the fact that, Rennie does a really good point with the fact that we wear all the hats. We're the ones that are creating one, we are the ones that get them out the door, kind of thing. So if you're someone who really wants this finished, I mean, you gotta get that work done. And one of the cool things about them is that they are such a cool learning experience, and they really show you how momentum is built when you're creating them, and understanding your process, and kind of like fine tuning what you like and what you don't like about it too. One thing that I would always suggest when doing webcomics is, because you're wearing so many hats, is that if there is a process that is not jiving with you, your least favorite, this is time to kind of reflect and be like, wow, I really hate like the inking process. I can't believe I said that. Anyway, I really
Why
hate
would
the
you say that? That are you okay?
I'll speak for other people who hate the inking process, and they're like, it's my least favorite part. And I'm just like, you know what? Maybe it's time to kind of workshop and see if there's a style that you prefer without inking, or just go right from pencils and stuff like that. Just kind of like eliminating things that don't make sense to you or are kind of frustrating, or learning them in a way that makes sense to you, that you don't have to like do it how other people do, and that process annoys you and stuff like that. So that's going to help with, like I said, the momentum and understanding your entire process, so that when you do and you're just like, okay, I've made 30 pages of webcomic and I understand how I create a webcomic. What did I not enjoy? How do I feel? And kind of do a reassessment from there. And I think once you hit that point, that's when it's going to be like, okay, so what are my long-term goals? What am I thinking about? What's going on? What do I want from this? And then you're going to start thinking of those goals, and then from those goals you can start thinking, okay, well, I really want to finish my first book of my webcomic, or my first series or whatever, but I would really like it to be done before X time. And then you're going to start putting those kind of deadlines and stuff like that. And it's just going to really help with working on other projects, and just really understanding the whole process that you have with it. That structure will help you create this comic in a healthy way. And like, that's just the thing. At the end of the day, this is something that's going to be a little bit more healthy in the long run, just because webcomics are such a massive project. You don't want to be stuck with something that feels so overwhelming. And so when you hold yourself accountable to having it done on certain kind of dates, or having X amount finished or whatever, it's going to feel easier when you're breaking it down that way, as opposed to it being like, here's this whole entire mountain of project and I'm scared kind of thing. So I like deadlines.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to the accountability too, there's like uh, when you're like in a group setting, or maybe it is a group project, but maybe it's just a group of friends you have on Discord or something, and you're sharing your work. I think that can help a lot. I've been in anthology projects before, for example, where we all have to make this comic, we all have to make a short comic, and so that's on top of our normal comic, and that's a little bit of pressure. But what really helps me is knowing that I have other people to share my progress with. They're going to help hype me up, they're going to help me get excited and keep me on task. I can ask them questions when I'm feeling stuck, so I'm not just sitting there and saying, well, I don't know what to do, I guess I'll just wait a week, and magically the answers still won't be there in a week, but I can stop thinking about it. Yeah, don't do that. But like, when it's encouraging other people who have the same deadlines as you to work on their stuff too. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I'm like, yeah, okay. The more I talk about my stuff, the more it actually helps remind other people that they have their stuff to work on. And so I'm actually being helpful to their deadlines by doing this. And so like that's the kind of like dynamic that you want. You want a little group or something like that, so you can continue to talk about it, and you don't have this situation where you have a huge project that you're putting off to the very last minute.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think in we are very fortunate that in the Screen Tones community we have a little Discord server that has a nice little stream zone, and a lot of Discord servers have voice chats or whatever, and we've named ours co-work chat, and there's always people in there, and it's always great sort of having everyone working on comics together. And like I always find that I get a lot more done when I'm in those spaces. It's like taking your work down to a cafe and you're drawing with the other comics friends. um that's really so helpful to have sort of a deadlines buddy. So we've talked about sort of all the things that deadlines can do for us, but what are the kind of like negative impacts and effects that deadlines can have on yourself in the world of webcomics?
So, interesting enough, webcomics, as I always say, have changed quite a lot. They are fluctuating in their popularity, and right now they're quite popular to make. So you'll see that there are a lot of little contests and stuff like that that kind of exist in the community so that you can win prizes, get your comic to be an original on some platforms and stuff like that. And always with the excitement, I always see the downfall of the absolute stress it comes with knowing that there is a deadline to meet with something like this. And there was recently, I can't even say recently, there was last year a contest in webtoons called the called for action. It was an action contest that they have creators make an original little 64, was it 64 panels for the story, a minimum 64, and they had to tell something that was in the action genre. And winners kind of got their entries greenlit for original series, and there was prizes and stuff like that. So during that time, it was a very stressful kind of creation period for a lot of people who were really excited about the prospect of having an original series and stuff like that and the money that went along with it. But also, just meeting those deadlines was just very, very stressful to see and to kind of watch a lot of people fall apart. Because here's something that webcomics have is that it has this nice fluid creation period. You can create however and whatever you kind of want. I mean, you're not bound to a contract unless you are. And so you kind of have whatever free reign with that. But now there's like this notion of needing to have X amount out to meet needs to get certain kind of readers or to meet these deadlines so that you can have a chance to get somewhere else. And it boils so much to the top with a lot of people seeing what's at stake. And I think that's something that freaks people out when you see something so huge, like I said previously, with the fact that not only is something like this quite big with the original or money or anything like that, it's the creating process too. A web comic is so much work. It is so much work. There are so many different skills that go into making a web comic. And I don't know how I feel about stuff like that being a contest, because that's a lot of free work. But that's a hot take for another time.
I mean, I think Thame was doing some of the contests too with Webtoon, just as
I
like a
did.
like what was your thought process? Because I know some of those you actually turned into minis for conventions too, right?
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. I'm sort of a weirdo. I like having like a hard externally imposed deadline every now and then. And kind of I feel like something that is important is to kind of know what your own process looks like before jumping in to something like that. And like I've spent like a while just kind of figuring out a way that I can get my process down to like kind of a reasonable time frame. So when I decided to jump into it, I kind of knew going in, here's how much I'm willing to dedicate to this project, and here's what I can do with it afterwards to make it like worth my while, even if I don't win. I kind of went in with the expectation that I wouldn't, but I wanted to do a short story because I want to work on things other than just kind of one comic and sort of spread out a little creatively. So I kind of put together this little short story to kind of have on my own. And yeah, it was just kind of interesting, like breaking it down panel by panel. It wasn't a way that I had really thought about my process before, because I always think about things in terms of pages. And suddenly I was like, okay, I have to tell a short story from beginning to end. But the biggest roadblock for me was figuring out the story. I didn't want to even start drawing until I thought I had a solid idea to jump into. And my rule for myself was that if I couldn't nail down an idea to get started on like jumping into it with 2 months left before the actual deadline, I was just gonna not bother, because I was like, if I leave it that long, I won't be giving myself enough time to actually draw it, and I'll become really stressed, and I don't want to be stressed. So that was kind of my experience, but like it might be a bit of an outlier because I've been doing this since 2007, which is a very long time.
Yeah, but it's also the case that you're that experience really helped you, right? Because you're not going from 0 to 60 miles an hour all in one go. I feel like a lot of people try to like get into these contests or put these like very heavy deadlines on themselves when they don't have the experience and they don't have the stamina and they don't really know what their process is like. So that's kind of the difference to me, is knowing what your process is like.
Yeah, absolutely. Like having the ability to like look at the length of story that was being asked for and be like, okay, that's about the equivalent to like 2/3 of a chapter of the story that I'm currently working on. How long does it usually take me to produce that many pages? Can I do that within the time frame being asked for? And then if the answer is yes, maybe I'll do it. If the answer is no, I'm just going to do something different with my time.
I feel like FOMO is a big culprit with a lot of these things. Like you said a really good point there, Delphi, about like going from 0 to 60. And I see a lot of like newer creators get really hyped when they hear about somebody else's process in a way that it's like, oh, what? You're on printing your books? I'm only on chapter 1, but I want to print my book now. And I got to do it now. And it gets like really, really intense, and stuff like that starts to stress them out because they want to do everything right now. That I've never been to a convention, but you're going to a convention, and the closest convention near to me is a month away, and that's my deadline, and you know what I mean. And it just starts kind of like turning into this giant katamari of stress and things that you can't kind of go into because of what you mentioned, Delphi, is that experience that Thane had going into these giant contests and whatnot, and having those expectations laid down really helps like soften those deadlines that are all in there, and understand where you're kind of going to go from.
Yeah, just hearing all this makes me think of a lot of the old Inktober stuff, because I know that Inktober used to be a much bigger thing than it is right now, but like that's a case of where deadlines run amok, where it's I gotta do a thing every single day, and some people are really good at that. Some people can really just sit down and 10 minutes later have a great drawing, have a little ink, or some people have the discipline to be able to do it and set sort of boundaries on that deadline. Like, I'll be able to finish today's piece, but I'm only doing something loose and it's only going to be this size or whatever, things like that. But the amount of burnout I saw after things like Inktober was massive, because it was a lot of people who like couldn't necessarily keep up with it. And I don't mean that in a bad way either. It's very much like they didn't have the stamina, or it wasn't the way that their workflow is based on. And they felt like, well, if I can't do 30 drawings, fully inked drawings in a month, then why am I doing this? And I think that that can instill the wrong sense of how to approach the work, because webcomics are a marathon, and sometimes in like those contests or Inktober or other things like that, it turns into a sprint very quickly, which it's kind of the reverse from a normal marathon, where you need to do the sprints to train up to the marathon. This is, you need the marathon in order to train for the sprints.
There is one online not really a contest, but like an online challenge that I actually really like the way they handle it. It's called Art Slam, and it happens during the summer. It just kind of runs from, I think, June to August every year. And people will be signing up. I think they open up signups in May. And when you apply for it, you can decide what level of challenge you want to set for yourself in advance. So you can sign up and say, I want to do it just for the month of June. And my goal is to, you don't have to say, I want to make a drawing every day. Like you can say that, but you can also say, I want to make a drawing every week, or I want to do 3 drawings during that month, or I want to spend the entire month working on one single piece, or I want to do a little bit of studies every day of landscapes or life drawings. And nothing has to be finished, but just like hold a pencil and put it to a piece of paper. And you can say that you'll do it for 1 month, or for 2 months, or for all 3 months at any level of intensity. And you can change it partway through or beforehand. You can be like, I want to do it like maximum intensity the whole time, or like low level of intensity. And whatever it is that you have kind of stated for yourself, like it's a soft deadline. You don't have to do it. People in the community aren't going to be like, no, nobody's going to hunt you down, like force you to see something through if you decide like partway through, like, oh, I'm not into this after all. But like the fact that you can set that going in to kind of whatever feels reasonable, and that you have that flexibility built into the process right from the outset. I just really like the way that community kind of handles things.
You were saying that like nobody's gonna come and hunt you down, but I feel like I get that sentiment a lot from other creators. Like, oh no, I if I don't post this number of things during Inktober, people are counting on me. People will notice. I have to apologize for missing these days because people are totally paying attention to this, and they're not. They're really, really not. Everybody who follows you on like a social media account or on your Patreon is doing it because they liked what you do. They like seeing what you do at whatever frequency you do it. And so you don't need to apologize. You don't need to say, I missed this thing. Oh, I'm so sorry, because it's a deadline that you set in your head. It's not something that they ever knew about. So they don't even know that you were going to be posting once a week on your Patreon or whatever. And they're just happy to see stuff. So I mean, that's one of the things too. If you find yourself apologizing a lot, just like ask, what for? Am I late? Am I doing something really terrible? Am I inconveniencing these people somehow? No, you're not. You're giving them something really good, and you're doing it at the pace that is good for you. That's something to be proud of, not to be apologizing for.
Now, in the ever changing world of social media, which who knows what it'll be by the time this episode comes out,
Oh my god.
you feel those social pressures there. How do you balance that?
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's tricky too, because you feel like maybe there's like an algorithm thing that you have to make, and you have to like base your deadlines around that. Most of the time that's not worth it. But I, as a person who posts regularly on way too many social media platforms for my own good, I do actually try to maintain a buffer for my social media presence. I try to get everything that I've done in the month scheduled up for the next month, however much stuff that is. So yeah, I'll be doodling side doodles or thoughts in Discord, and just dropping them, and then at the end of the month I'll collect those all up, and I'll make about 2 or 3 social media posts a week. I'll schedule those all up, and some months I have a lot of new drawings to show off, and some months I don't have very many new drawings at all. So I just space it out. And in those slower months, maybe I'll alternate in some new stuff with like reruns of older art that I liked. I think artists can feel a lot of pressure around keeping active on social media and like having absolutely new stuff for everybody. But like the truth is that people even if they did see your art, which there's no guarantee they did, because who knows what happened with the algorithm, or even if they were checking that day. But like, even the people who do remember your old art, they want to see it again. That's why they followed you. They like seeing your stuff. And so some of that stuff that you're going to be reposting is the reason they followed you in the first place. So it's really not a big deal if you're feeling behind, if you're feeling down because you're not making your deadlines or whatever for algorithm purposes on whatever social media that you post on. Like, there's ways to keep it going, and if you kind of space it all out and look at it again, instead of like, I didn't post anything today or I didn't post anything this week, of here's the posts I'm making this month, then I think that helps maintain a healthier attitude while still being active if that's what you want.
Man, social media scheduling is like the one thing that I have never been able to like self-motivate myself for. It's really silly because like I have done Inktober in the past, and I've done Art Slam, and I did the other contests and stuff like that. But when it comes to something as like simple as like try to post new art on social media, even if I have the art, just the process of logging in and setting it up, just, I don't know, it's tricky for me. I don't know why.
I absolutely shake your hand. I have so much art that I just don't share. I'm just like, ugh, God, it's in the ether now.
No.
I have to think of something to say about it when I post it.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Oh man, getting
Or
old.
you could just post it with nothing and then see what happens.
Just pick your favorite 3 emojis and put your favorite 3 emojis in there.
I do
Yeah.
like a good emoji. Okay,
Eyes emoji.
so I did want to ask, on the topic of deadlines, what are some healthy ways to check yourself, like check in on yourself, to make sure that deadlines are actually working for you and not against you?
I think one of the like the surest signs that the way that you have your deadlines set up isn't working for you is if you keep missing them. Or if they just don't get hit. Like after a couple times of like one missed deadline here or there isn't a red flag, but like if there's enough where it's destabilizing the way that you work, or it's preventing you from hitting major milestones or goals that you have, that's a cue to take like a week or two off, recompose, and look at it from the 30,000 foot view and go, okay, what's working here, what doesn't, what's changed in my life, what's changed in my work, what's changed in my process, and reevaluate from there and rebuild that momentum in a new and different way that's helpful for you. The key to all deadlines based things is it has to work to support you, not to penalize you.
One of the things that I noticed a lot in the webcomic community is that we're pretty tight. There's a lot of things that it makes its way circles around. Like we're kind of all in it together. So one thing that you'll see a lot is that the comparisons will happen and you're kind of like looking over at someone else's work and you're like, oh gee Willie, I wish that was me. And so I actually see that a lot with like people's goals and stuff like that, and with deadlines. They'll see someone who has unknowingly like years and years of experience working in webcomics, and they're just like, oh my damn, I want to do that now. Like I want to do that. Like I need to get to that speed, and I need that deadline. That deadline is now mine and stuff like that. So it's really good to just not do that. Just you can't compare yourself or your creative process to other people's. Your input is not going to be the same as someone else's, and same with outputs. It's just, it's all different. All the processes are different. So just kind of understand what you actually can put out, what's healthy for you to put out. Don't pull all nighters to finish something. That's not healthy. It's not a flex. We don't like it in the creative community, and I wish that culture would just go away. Approach these things in a healthy kind of state with creating, like, moderation and understanding momentum and stuff like that, and this will feel better in the long run.
I think too, it's just really interesting when you finish a project, how do you feel? Because like, the purpose of deadlines for me if I'm making up deadlines for myself, is to get that high from like, I did it. I finished the thing. I crossed the finish line. This is so great. And maybe I'm a little exhausted, but the overwhelming feeling is like, yes, I got my vision out into the world. I got this short story done. I got these things out there, and I'm feeling confident and good about that. And if that's not the feeling that you get, if you're feeling like, oh, well, I got through it this time, or it's not really the quality of work that I wanted, but I guess I did it. Or maybe you just didn't do it, and you're hiding under your desk and feeling awful about it, and you're saying, no, I suck because I can't do this thing that I said I was going to do. Like that, just kind of check your vibes. Like, was it a healthy victory, or was it an unhealthy victory? Make the deadlines make sense for you. Exactly what Rainey said. Look at what's happening in your life. Look at what your goals are, and take a step back and see like what is going to generate that feeling of exhilaration of like, yes, I did it.
Don't let your victories become Pyrrhic victories.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. There's a certain like sometimes it can be fun to like pick up a project that is like an externally imposed deadline, like those contests. And I mean, for anyone who's started working with like a publisher or something, that can make a previously soft deadline become a hard deadline as soon as there's another party involved in it and there's money and so on. Like I kind of try to treat my Patreon fulfillment as being a bit of a harder deadline, just because there is a bit of a promise there. Like money has exchanged hands. And so I want to give each of my tiers kind of at least a few posts a month to kind of enjoy, and with like a crowdfunding campaign or whatever. But if I'm having like a busy year or something and I don't think I have the time to increase my workload from what it was previously, maybe it's not a good time to start looking into these externally imposed deadlines. So on some level, like joining a new contest or like applying for a new thing, like might not be a good idea depending on where things are at. So it's good to kind of evaluate how you're feeling about your work in the moment when it comes to any currently visible opportunity.
Yeah, so deadlines like are just such an important part to a balanced, healthy webcomic workflow. And I think with that, I think we're going to call this a Donkey Kong wrap. I've been Rennie. You can read my work at www.kateblast.com.
I've been Crispy. You can read my work at ghostjunksickness.com or lunarblight.com.
I've been Verathane. You can read my work at chiralt.sevensmith.net or at witchwoodcomic.com.
And I've been Delphina, and you can read my comic Zombulus at zombulus.com.
And we'll see you later.
What's the deadline for this?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's a month later than it was when we first wanted to do this episode.
Don't
after
tell
pushing
them
it
that!
3 times.
I'm so sorry we didn't meet this deadline you had no idea about.
Our complete self-imposed deadline.
Thank you for listening to Screen Tones, a webcomic podcast. Want to know some other ways to support us? Check out our Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/screentonescast, where your support will help us create more episodes, reach cool extra bonus goals, and keep us talking about anything and everything webcomics. You can also find us on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and our Discord server. Thank you so much for listening, sharing, rating, and supporting, and we'll see you next time.